Christine Ricci never intended to kill Michael Ricci on January 28, 2021, and the Commonwealth doesn't have any evidence to prove that she did. The argument that occurred that was just described to you, the confrontation that was just described to you, all of that information all happened during about a 15-minute, small 15-minute pocket between 4:30 and 4:45 on January 28, 2021. And every answer to every question that we have about Christine's intent, Michael's intent, Michael's last actions and Christine's actions are contained and sealed in that 15-minute pocket. And ladies and gentlemen, that's probably why the Commonwealth is going to spend such a small amount of time talking about that 15-minute period, because they want to distract you. Christine's words are really the only evidence that we have of what occurred during that 15-minute pocket. And those words, remember, were spoken in the moments after all of these events happened. It's true that she doesn't give a complete statement of everything that occurs, and as we go through the evidence in this case, and when I come back and talk to you at the end, I'm going to suggest to you, through reference to both the forensic evidence as well as putting together the statements, about what probably happened around and between the details of what it was that she said. When the police arrive, the evidence is going to be that Christine Ricci is absolutely beside herself. Absolutely beside herself. She is crying, she is heaving, she is hyperventilating. The first responders come to the scene and she can get almost nothing out. She says he collapsed, that comes out. The Commonwealth wants it to be the case that that means that she told some sort of misleading statement. The evidence is going to show that she gave an incomplete statement and that maybe she wasn't in a position where she even could give a complete statement. She was just too upset. After Michael Ricci's body is removed from the house out to the ambulance, there's going to be evidence from an officer by the name of Chris Martin who's going to say that at that point they sat her in a chair and they asked her what happened. While the body is still out at the ambulance, while they're so-called discovering the stab wound that you just heard a moment ago. And the evidence is going to say that when she's confronted at that moment about what happened, she gives a little bit more detail, but she's still extremely upset. She's so upset, in fact, that she actually takes some medication to try to calm her down. But as she begins to say the details of the case, she mentions the knife, and she mentions the argument and the fact that it escalated. And that's going to be supported by the testimony of Sophia Ricci, who heard that escalation of the argument into a screaming match. And it's true, she does say, I held the knife out, and then at another point she does say, he lunged at me. And at another point mentions being attacked. And I'm going to suggest to you that the evidence will be that even when Christine said those words, that wasn't everything that happened. And at that point, the evidence will show she may not have had a complete memory of what had just fully occurred. But Christine Ricci's words are the only direct evidence that you're going to have about what happened between 4:30 and 4:45 p.m. on January 28, 2021. They're the only eyewitness reports of what happened. And they don't at all support the story that the government just told you. And that is probably why they are going to spend the entire case discussing things that didn't occur during that period of time. I expect that they are going to parade a bunch of witnesses in, remote friends of Michael Sr., who are going to be allowed to offer their opinions about the defendant, that they are going to pick along a 2.5-year period, a series of isolated events, and try to string them together to create the most damning possible picture of who Christine Ricci is. And that they will do so because they hope that you will be so distracted by the question of whether Christine Ricci is the type of person that would commit this crime, that you'll forget that the real question is whether she actually did it. As I say, at the end of this case, we will hear forensic evidence. We will come back and we will tell you a little bit more about what happened in January 28, 2021 in the absolutely critical 15-minute period. talk about the mechanics and what's suggested. And a lot of it will be inference by inference, because we won't have that type of eyewitness testimony beyond someone's statements that was very, very affected by what had just happened to them. But what emerges from that is a very, very different picture altogether. Now, the Commonwealth wants you to tell you these stories about the past and about the affair. And it's true, there's going to be a story about an affair, and it's going to be a big part of the Commonwealth's case. This was an affair that took place in 2018. And a lot of the events that they're going to talk to you about physical confrontations, happened within just a couple of months of that event, maybe anywhere from a 6-month to 9-month period after that event. You're going to hear about other events that happened in the subsequent year and a half. Things like Michael going to AA, Christine supporting him in going to AA, him getting sober, him getting counseling, Ms. Ricci getting separate counseling, them going to couples counseling, them reaffirming their vows in Hawaii in 2019. And you're going to hear from all of the children, and although they're going to say that there was fighting still and there was a fair amount of marital discord, they're not going to describe the type of events that were occurring in 2018. But the Commonwealth wants to sort of string these things together from 2.5 years earlier to try to pretend that that says something about Christine Ricci in 2021. I'm going to ask you not to be distracted, to focus like a laser on the relevant period of 4:30 to 4:45 on January 28th, 2021. And I want you to be extra vigilant every single time the Commonwealth tries to distract you and talk to you about ancient history and tries to tell you about who Christine is and why you should believe bad things about her, and focus on what do they actually know about what happened on January 28th, 2021 between the hours of 4:30 and 4:45. And if at the end of the day, what you're left with is, I just don't know what happened, which is exactly where they are, then I'm going to ask you to find Ms. Ricci at the end of this case during closing not guilty.
Thank you. I'll seek counsel at the side of the bench.